I can barely find any English YouTube videos about reading historical Japanese kana, so today I'm going to change that. In this video, we're going to cover why you should learn it, what changed in modern kana style, and why you probably already know a few things that will make learning old kana easier. Make sure to watch through to the end to learn all the tips and tricks. Okay, so first, here's why you should learn it. It's not even that old. The current US president was born in the year that the law modernizing Japanese writing was passed. We're talking like 80 years ago. Okay, not that long. There are still some people alive whose names are written using old kana usage. You'll still see people named this way, like to honor their grandparents and how they spelled their names. You still see it on buildings, landmarks, certain products, even in modern Japanese works. That's right, things coming out today will still use the old kana style because they're set in that historical setting. So it's more present than you would think, and most importantly, there's still all the classic works of Japanese fiction that have not been updated. I've even seen books that have a label on them saying they've been rewritten in modern Japanese orthography, but they are lying, and it's actually old Japanese orthography. And to reiterate, we're talking about books less than 100 years old. If you've read, like, The Great Gatsby, that's older than the books we're talking about. This is not, we're not talking about ancient Japanese, it's modern Japanese, but they spelled the words kind of funky. That's what we're going over here. Okay, so what changed? So basically, Japanese used to be like English, where you had these really old historical spellings that no longer match how words are pronounced. And, just like modern English, there's common spelling rules and character combinations that you apply when you're reading to figure out how the word is actually pronounced today. And once you know these rules, it's not too bad to read, even if it doesn't look like the spelling makes sense at first. So we're going to start with the easy changes and work up to the more complicated ones. But you'll quickly see that overall, it's not too bad. Especially if you have a basic understanding of Japanese, you can kind of figure these out in your head as you go. So first up are these 5 kana. Except for when they come at the start of the word, follow this conversion pattern. Right, so ha becomes wa, he becomes e, fu becomes u, he becomes e, ho becomes o. And you already know the particles that are exceptions to this list. And it seems simple at first, just convert them, except for when they come at the start of a word. But they're going to play a role in the later changes we'll go over, so you got to remember these. Okay, next up is simplifying the use of ji and zu. There's no sound change, it's just to make spelling easier. So as a reader, it's literally the same. It's only for when you're writing that it matters. But it could be a little tricky because you won't recognize how the word is written. It'll be a little different, and you'll have to sound it out and see, oh, that's the same as the modern word that I know. Okay, next is kua and gua just become ka and ga. It's simple. This is just a one-to-one substitution here. Easy enough. You also see this a lot in dictionaries that include the old spellings of kanji words, so that's why they do this. Okay, little tsu, this guy needs your help. They didn't have him yet. Okay, I don't know how they didn't think of this for centuries, but they didn't have little tsu. They just wrote it as either big tsu, or they just didn't write it at all, right? So, for example, in gakki, they wrote that gakuki, and you just gotta look at that and say, well, the ku and the ki, that's just gonna become ki with the little tsu in modern writing. And in those cases, with these Chinese words, which is the most common case that they wouldn't be writing the little tsu, it's fine because it's kanji. They're not writing the hiragana anyway. So you already know how that's pronounced. You can just look that up, or you can yomitan it or whatever. You're not seeing those kana. But it's still used in native Japanese words that are written in kana. And they just wrote a big tsu instead, or they just did something else. So, for example, I was looking in a book, and irasharu was iratsu sharu, and what, and then, it's big tsu, but it's actually little tsu. So you got to know that. You got to know what word they were trying to write. Okay, and they also, they stopped taking W's back then. We all know what happened 80 years ago, so they got rid of W. So no more W sound. They weren't pronounced with the W at the time. Just get rid of it. You already know that woe is O. And if you see these, it's simply E, E, and O. No W sound. But if you've never seen these kana, you don't know them, you gotta learn the hiragana and katakana versions of them, and just to read the same letter, the same sound that you already know. Wo as a particle, it's still just itself as a particle. If you see it anywhere else, it just becomes hiragana o. Now this next change, one of the big ones, okay? So instead of using mu to mean like half a dozen different pronunciations, they invented to use instead. And now mu is only pronounced mu, amazing. But now took on all the other ones. Now is still like 5 different pronunciations. If you've ever listened to Japanese, you already know this. But yeah, so it's a big change. You're gonna see mu in like all these places that you would see today, and you just have to know that it's just a completely different sound. So you're gonna see mu a lot. You gotta convert it in your head, and you gotta know that you're supposed to convert it there because some mu still exists. This isn't a replacement thing. It's sometimes it's being replaced. So it's a little tougher and it's a big one. Alright, now it's time for the combo changes. That's right. When you have a plus u or fu, that becomes o. Because remember, fu becomes u, so it's really just u or u. And the a is any kana ending in an a sound, so like ma, ka, ta, whatever. And this will become a long o. So it'll be like ma will become like mo, and then that will combine with the u sound to be a long o, like mo. You get it. And it gets really tricky with those 5 kana from earlier. Because remember, wo becomes an o. So wa-u, that becomes wo-u, becomes o, because the wo is an o. So it's like a double change. And then same with word medial ho becoming an o. You'll see this with, for example, the word iu. In modern Japanese was written ifu. Remember, the fu is an u. But then there's still conjugate according to old style rules and based on the fu. So one conjugation would be ihau, but that is actually iyo. So you got to watch out for that. But once you learn the grammar, spellings, and stuff, you kind of got it. It's just like English. Once you realize what they're going for, you'll get it down with some practice. Next combo, e plus u or fu becomes u with a little u, not a big u. And again, this applies to all kind of ending the sound e, so like ki, mi, whatever. Here's an example: ki fu becomes q. Okay, next one is e plus u or fu becomes yo with a small yo. And this one's even crazier because when you have the yo, that kind of like changes things a bit more. So here is kefu, that's kyo. Yep, completely different. Just got to know that. And another big one is deseu, that is desho. So it's not as obvious, but once you know it, you got it. Okay, now I've been showing you all of these examples in hiragana, but keep in mind I've been saying kana this whole time, right? And the reason is because actually they weren't writing anything in hiragana. Well, they were some things, but for example, if you look at the emperor's surrender speech from World War II, that's all katakana. So if you've been looking at this being like, oh, I can teleport these kana, well, it's not even these kana. You gotta be able to recognize not just all the words you know in hiragana spelled differently, but also written in a different script. Okay, remember the pictures I showed at the beginning of the video? Did you notice anything weird about them? That's right, they're written backwards. Back then when they changed the writing, they also changed the direction. They used to write from right to left, but now they write from left to right. And this is why manga and novels are still written and read from right to left, because it's a historical carryover. So there's some trivia for you. And keep in mind, the characters still look the same. They still wrote them exactly the same, but you would move your eyes across the page in the opposite direction. That's the only change. So your mind, right? You have the sound changes, right? Then you're going to have to read the katakana instead of the hiragana. And then you got to read it in the opposite direction. So you got to completely rewire your brain here. But again, if you know the modern Japanese pronunciation, you have a little bit of familiarity, it'll come to you quick just with some practice. Okay, here's the final thing you got to know. Iteration markers. Many of you know that there's a character for when you have 2 of the same kanji in a row. Here it is. Some of you may know that there are also characters for repeated hiragana and katakana. Here they are. They don't use them anymore, but you'll still see them in classic Japanese literature. There's also voice variations for when the repeated kana gets voiced. So like ha ha, that's the same, but ha ba, well now the ha gets voiced, so you got to mark that with the repeat. But what you may not know is that they used to use a giant hiragana ku for when vertically writing a group of 2 or more characters in a row that get repeated. And yes, there's a voiced version too, so don't get knowledge checked by that. Okay, some final pointers. Watch out for morpheme boundaries, so like compound words and kanji words. So treat the 2 words in the compound word like independent words. Don't combine them together. If at the word boundary there's an and then an u, don't be like, well, I gotta make it o. Like, no, like it's 2 separate words that are just like written together. So keep them separate in how you're interpreting them into modern Japanese. There's also some exceptions, like the word for duck. It actually is pronounced with the H sound, so don't get it wrong. But like, you're gonna be yomi-channing these things anyway. Also, just some neat trivia about this giant coup. It's so big that in Unicode they have to split it up into 2 characters. So you've got like a top half and a bottom half, and of course there's like a top half voiced vertical kind of repeat character. It's crazy. That's just how big it is. If you read a book and you see this, you're not gonna forget it. So that you gotta go read. Just trust me. You can, I don't know, go find an old building, be like, wow, that's old Japanese. And you're like, oh, I know it now too. It'll be so cool, so crazy. Alright, that's all for today. Like and subscribe for more kanji content.